Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with something that I have not done since January, so for quite a while, and that is a reading wrap up. And like buses, one doesn't arrive for ages and then suddenly you get a few in quick succession, because this is going to be my July reading wrap up and then I will bring you my August reading wrap up in a couple of weeks, because I want to get back into the swing of them, because over the last few years, for various different reasons, judging prizes, all sorts of things, just also having a bit of burnout, I have not done as many as I would like. Well, I used to do them monthly and I want to get back into the swing of that. So that is what I'm hoping to do, and this is my way in, and now I feel like I've over talked about it and overthought it, and really I should just get cracking and hold a book up. But before I do, I just want to mention this isn't everything that I read in July. Some books I have to keep my thoughts on a secret, because they are the books that I read for the Sky Arts Book Award, which will be announced on the 17th of September. I believe it's going to be on the Telly Box. I have no idea who's won. Well, I know that it's one of three, because with a fabulous panel of judges, we selected 3 books out of a long list that was secret, and we met up, had a really great conversation about them, but then we voted by a secret ballot. So it's going to be really exciting to find out who's won, because I don't really have any idea. So anyway, getting that out of the way, that's why this isn't all the books that I read in July, but I still have 9 books to tell you about. I've got some absolute bangers in here. I've also got one of the worst books that I read all year and can't actually quite believe that I finished, which I'll talk about at the very end, because I'm going to do them in order of when I read them, starting with David Nicholls' You Are Here, which is David's latest novel. David is an author that I have been a fan of since I read, and I have an OG copy here. One day, way back in 2009, The Spine Has Faded. It's that old, it's a museum piece. And I loved his writing. I loved the way he makes the ordinary feel extraordinary. I love the way he creates these characters that you feel like you could bump into in the street, and their flaws and all. Yeah, I just really love his writing, and it was very much the case with You Are Here that I fell in love with our 2 protagonists. We meet Marnie, who, some of the way David writes about how lonely Marnie is feeling, like, almost made me cry, because I thought it was just done so beautifully and so honestly. And yeah, she's feeling very lonely and she's kind of at a loss with what to do with her life, and her friends keep trying to match her up with people, including one friend who decides that she should go on a walking holiday because there's this eligible bachelor that she might meet. That eligible bachelor is not Michael, who also ends up on that walking holiday, and he again has been dragged into this a bit against his will, and he is going through a divorce, or has just recently been divorced, and is at a loss in his life too. And at first there's this kind of flinty thing going on between Marnie and Michael, and then we follow them as the walk goes on through the Lake District, through both sunshine and the rain. It's like, if you're looking for a book that feels like a proper British holiday, this is very much it. And that was one of the reasons as well that I was really keen to get to this one, because I used to go on walking holidays when I was a kid, and I think I've shared this story on the channel before. My great uncle Derek, we used to do like 10, 11 miles a day, maybe sometimes 12. And my uncle Derek would memorise Sherlock Holmes stories to tell me at 2 different points on that day to keep me going whenever it was like I was flagging, maybe just before lunch and then just as we were heading on the final stretch. And everyone used to try and keep up because they wanted to hear the stories too. I think at some point we ran out of Sherlock Holmes and then he started just telling me other Arthur Conan Doyle stories. But Uncle Derek, great Uncle Derek, who was really truly great, is one of the reasons that I have become the reader that I am. Anyway, this brought me all of those sort of trudging through the rain, but also the joy and the sweat of trudging through the sunshine. And as I mentioned, there's this sort of delightfully, and that is the term I would use, delightfully flinty element. But again, 2 protagonists who I just totally fell in love with, flaws and all, and was really touched by the way in which their vulnerabilities are shown. And I think the way that David Nicholls writes how it feels to be divorced, as someone who has been divorced, is really well done, because you might think that society like doesn't treat divorcees a certain way, or there aren't certain presumptions and perceptions made of divorced people, but there can be, and I've seen that happen. And I just thought, yeah, the way these two vulnerable people interact, and then this story of kind of perseverance through the British countryside was just a real treat. So yeah, highly, highly, highly recommend that. I also really recommend Long Island by Colm Tóibín. Now, I can't talk about this one too much because it is technically the sequel to another book that I read in 2009, Brooklyn, which I absolutely loved when I read it and has become an absolutely phenomenal film. But because if you're someone who wants to read the books in order, I would say definitely get to Brooklyn first and then head to this. You can read it standalone, but yeah, I feel like if you went back to Brooklyn, you'd sort of, because this book starts 20 years after it, it refers to it occasionally, very subtly. It's not like big, massive reveals, yet it also sort of is. But this sees Eilish 20 years after what happened in Brooklyn, about to head home again for various reasons that I won't spoil, because it's like a really propulsive start to the book and I was instantly intrigued and hooked. And it's then follows on from friendships and relationships she had back home that sort of reignite, restart. There's again a bit of a flintiness in this as well, which delightfully flinty, I would also say, with this book. What I will say is, once again, this is Colm Tóibín just writing such beautiful prose, such wonderful, complex, sometimes difficult characters, sometimes difficult in you get a bit frustrated with them, but also sometimes you love how difficult they can be. Eilish's mother, I say no more. And yeah, I just really, really love this. And what I hadn't realised is his novel, Nora Webster, about Nora Webster, is about, I'm going to say it again, Nora Webster. I'm not going to edit this, so this is going to be interesting. But yeah, his novel, Nora Webster, the titular character of that appeared in this briefly. I don't remember her being in this one, but it's made me want to go back to read Nora Webster. How many times can I say Nora Webster? Nora Webster, Nora Webster, Nora Webster. She's appeared in front of me. But yeah, I'm really, really keen to head to Nora Webster, and also all the Colm Tóibín books that I haven't read, because this just reminded me of what a master, and he has written a book called The Master, or was it The Magician? I don't know, anyway. He is a real master of prose, and I love the way he writes with this wryness, and that's something that I would say actually links in again with David Nicholls. There's a wryness. I think David probably has more, does he have more joy? There's a little bit more joy in David's books, whereas Colm, not so much. But I thought this was fantastic. So yeah, I will say no more. I don't want to spoil anything, but I would say read Brooklyn first. That said, maybe at some point I'll do a video on Brooklyn, Nora Webster and Long Island, because I'd quite like to listen to Brooklyn again. The Irish lilt on audio, that might be what kind of gets me to really, really enjoy an audio book that's fiction, because generally I don't. I tend to prefer a non-fiction book. Anyway, back to the next book that I read in July, and this was my third book by an author that I've really, really, really enjoyed before. And I really, really love this, so therefore they are now officially one of my favourite authors, and that is Jane Rawson, and this is A History of Dreams. And I first read Jane Rawson when I'd heard loads of buzz about her novel From the Wreck, which, to give you a small synopsis, is a novel about a man and a woman who are on a boat. They have this tension, then something awful happens to the boat, they get to shore, they separate, she disappears, he can't work out why, but we know it's because she's an alien being who's turned into a cat, and then we follow on from there. That is not my usual sort of cup of tea, pun not intended because of what's on the cover of this book, but I just loved her writing, I loved her characters, I loved the world that she creates, and that was very much the case with her latest book, A History of Dreams, which is set in 1930s Adelaide in Australia. Jane Rawson is an Australian writer, and it is about a group of young women who come together. We have sisters Margaret and Esther, we have Phyllis, and we have kind of their sort of unofficial ringleader, I'm going to say, Audrey. And Audrey has inherited magical, well, she's basically a witch, and she's inherited or learnt it from her great aunt, and she decides to teach these other three women this magic that she can do and become a coven to try and stop World War II. And that premise, I was like, that sounds so good. And honestly, this is just done so well. I'm going to say it, spellbound by it. I loved these women. I loved their characteristics. I loved how different they were from each other, particularly Phyllis, but I don't want to spoil anything. And I loved the way it looked at the strains that can be put on the relationships of women, caused sometimes by men, caused by misunderstanding. There's a really interesting look at sisterhood, both in terms of those members of your actual family, but also the family that you choose to create. Whilst also this being this incredible book about the power of dreams and how the world could be taken into such a dark direction if someone could control dreams. I won't spoil it. Well, that didn't spoil it at all, but I don't want to spoil it, so I won't say any more. But I mean, dreams are in the title. So, but if you're looking for something a little bit different, but still witchy vibes, it'd be a great autumn read. I'm so ready for autumn. Technically, according to Savage Science, that's a true thing. And having spoken to the Savage Meteorological, I can't even say the word, department, autumn does begin on Sunday, September 1st. So that's the law, that's the rules. I'll be talking about autumn plans, etc. then. But this would make a cracking autumn read, especially because it's got that autumnal colour to it too. And I am thinking about, oh no, I need to give one of my autumn reading plans away. I won't. That's just a big tease. But yeah, I really, really love this, and I want Jane Rawson to be read by a lot more people. So if you haven't got to From the Wreck, get to it. It's out in the UK. Actually, the hardback, if you can still get your mitts on it, has a quote on the cover by a certain someone. But yeah, I think that's an absolutely phenomenal book. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this too. And I liked Formaldehyde, which, yeah, that was quite a read too. I just think Jane Rawson does really exciting things with her fiction. I'm looking forward to, though, her non-fiction, which is coming out next year. Then on to a book that I read before it was announced as being one of the Booker Prize longlisted books. And that is Orbital by Samantha Harby. I am a big Samantha Harby fan. I absolutely loved... Oh, I can see the cover and I can't remember the name of the title. Oh, The Western Wind. I was going to call it The Windy Something, and I thought, no, that sounds wrong. But I absolutely loved The Western Wind. I really, really loved The Thief. Was it? Is it Dear Thief? The Thief? Dear Thief. The Wilderness. I haven't read all his songs, but I've also read The Shapeless Unease, A Year of Not Sleeping, which is her non-fiction. And yeah, I just think she is such an incredible writer. And this short, concise, yet so brimming with ideas and thoughts novel was an absolute banger for me. I wasn't sure I was going to get on with it because I'm not that big a fan of books set out in space, be they sci-fi or not. However, this is about 6 astronauts who are orbiting the world, and as they orbit Earth, the planet, they are watching what's going on Earth as they see this sort of massive storm heading towards land, and they're thinking about people back home, they're thinking about their lives, and I guess thinking about humanity and what it means to be human with this great distance. And so it's quite philosophical, which again, not normally my bag, but I just love Samantha Harby's writing, and I love the way that she looked at humanity from this lens of distance, but yet also this lens of both intimacy in the fact that these 6 people are so close to each other, and the fact that they are not family or friends, so what does that mean? But also the fact that in a way they're so isolated and so far from reality and humanity. Yeah, I just thought this was really, really, really compelling. I know not everyone's going to love it, but for me it was an absolute hit. And that cover is delicious. So yeah, I was thrilled to see Samantha longlisted for the Booker because, again, like I was saying about Jane Rawson, I feel like Samantha is an author who needs to be read much more. Do head to The Western Wind if you want a really different, again, that would be a perfect autumn book. Maybe I should do an autumn suggestions video. Let me know if you'd like that in the comments down below. But yeah, I love that book. It's a historical, well, medieval murder mystery told backwards. And if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what else will. But yeah, I thought this was great too. Then we had a book that I have to say was a slight disappointment for me, as I really loved this author's previous book, and I have felt like she could become a favourite author for me. This is Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. I absolutely loved Sing Unburied Sing. I read it when it was on the Women's Prize longlist and then shortlist, or whatever year that was. And so I was really excited for this and bought this signed edition when I was in Cambridge at the beginning of July. And it's about a young woman called Anis who, when we meet her, is being trained by her mother in this kind of martial art that her mother has known from their family history and their cultural background. And they're living on a plantation, they're both enslaved, and they become, without any spoilers, separated, and we follow Anis from there. And it's hard to say too much more about this book because I don't want to give anything away. But for me, I thought the writing was beautiful, as Jesmyn Ward is known for, and I was kept with the story because of that writing. I think for me, it sounds harsh to say this is a story that I've read before, because I do think Jesmyn Ward is trying to do something different with it, but I think it needed more pages, more words, and more character development depth. I'm not quite sure. It just didn't quite get me in the way that I wanted it to, and that's partly maybe me and the pressure that I put on this because I loved Sing Unburied Sing so much. But I don't know, this for me was like, you know, it wasn't a bad book at all. I'd give it like a solid 3.5, but it wasn't the book I was kind of expecting. But that's not the fault of the book. That's probably me and my expectations. But yeah, sadly, not a big hit for me. I don't want to say I enjoyed it because I didn't, because of the subject matter, but like, it was we talked about this at Patreon Book Club the other day. It was and I've written it down, I can't remember what the phrase was. But yeah, it was an extraordinary reading experience. There we go. But it just wasn't quite the extraordinary experience I was expecting because it was Jesmyn Ward. Wowzers, he has got rusty at these wrap-ups. Maybe he should never do them ever again. So then we have a book that I very much enjoyed. This book took me in directions that I kind of wasn't expecting, particularly towards the end, but again, I won't spoil anything. It's Bear by Julia Phillips, and I read Disappearing Earth a few years ago and absolutely loved it. This book has not come out in the UK yet. Huge thanks to the lovely David Ebershoff, who sent me a proof of this from Hogarth, and the book is so beautiful that I just wanted a finished copy, so that's what I got. But I had a lot of fun dog-earing the funk out of the proof because there was so much that this book made me think about. This is a book about Sam and, I want to say, Eleanor. Yes, Sam and Eleanor, or Elena, who are both looking after their mother. They are, you know, really living on the breadline. They're really struggling to kind of survive, basically, and their mother is very ill. And one day, one of the sisters, I think it's Sam, she's working on a boat that goes around these sort of remote lakes, and she sees a bear swimming to like an island that she lives on, and apparently that doesn't usually happen. So people are like, did you really see it? Was it not some sort of shape in the water, like maybe you missaw? However, then one day the bear is sat outside the front of the house, and there is this delicious, brooding yet unnerving, so we've had, what is it, deliciously, what did I say about the other two? Deliciously something with those two, but this is deliciously unnerving tension and atmosphere that Julia Phillips builds so brilliantly, as you start to see, one, how the two sisters react very differently to this bear, but also you start to question if the bear is real and what that might mean. And then, yeah, it's a book that very subtly plays quite a few games in your mind about what you think is really going on, as well as looking at sisterhood and the way that, you know, you can be so close to your siblings, but also it can be completely fractious, especially when you're going through a really difficult period. For example, if your mother is really, really sick, which is the case in this case, but also when people come into that dynamic who, how can I put this? The ways in which two sisters can react very differently or similarly towards people and what tensions that can cause, and also how they might react to a bear. That, I don't know, I feel like I've totally not solved that in the best way, but yeah, I love this. It really, really kind of had me hooked. I've seen some people be a bit mad about it, but I'm totally not. I think it was great, and yeah, I'm really, really glad that I got my mitts on, firstly, the proof. Thank you again, David, if you see this, but also then bought myself a copy. I just think she's a really, really, really brilliant writer, and I can't believe that hasn't been published over here. Then, penultimately, we have a book that is one of the most recommended in my DMs on Instagram from lovely folk that I follow in America. And so I, when I was buying books to have imported, I bought this one, and the next one. This one. This one is In Tongues by Thomas Grattan. And I have to say, as soon as I hear the word gratin, I think of potato gratin and just go, mmm. Now, I didn't know much about this other than lots of people said, you really, really need to read it. And so I went along with it and got it. And it's a tale of a young man called Gordon who is very good looking and can quite often use his looks to get what he wants, but also become embroiled in things that maybe he doesn't want to be embroiled in. I don't know what happened there to my voice. But yeah, and we follow him as he, well, in particular, gets to know this elderly or older, let's not say elderly, older gay couple, and gets kind of embroiled in their life. And I enjoyed this. It left me a bit like, it's a book that when I was reading it, I really, really enjoyed it. I think the cover's an absolute corker, but it's a book that has faded for me quite a lot. And I kind of kept wondering, what's the point, I guess. I couldn't really work it out, because I felt like it had this slight Highsmithian Ripley shade going on, but yet at the same time there's this real questionable power dynamic with this couple that's also kind of got, there's a lot of cat and mouse in this book, ironically, considering it's got a dog on the front, because I should say he becomes a dog walker to this couple initially. But I love the fact that sometimes you can't tell who's the cat and who's the mouse, even though, like I said, dog on the cover, and dog walking is very much involved. But I did also just come away thinking like, oh, I enjoyed that. And I just didn't, I don't know, I didn't feel, I'm going to go with the doggy analogy now, I didn't feel like there was quite enough meat on the bone, and I wanted a bit more. So yeah, I'm a bit puzzled with how I feel about this one. And I think, because I'm feeling now instantly like I'm being really, really rubbish at wrapping up books, and this is why I haven't done it for a while, I feel like I've sounded a bit dismissive about this book that I actually enjoyed as I read it. But I wanted more, I think I wanted more layers, and actually had there been more layers, this cat and mouse element would have been even more brooding and atmospheric and tense, and had all the more Highsmith Ripley-ish vibes about it, even though actually it's nothing like the Tamsin Mystery Ripley at all, because that makes it sound like there's murders and stuff going on. But yeah, the way it looks at power dynamics I found fascinating, the way it looks at queer life I found, in fact, there is some quite saucy, salacious scenes going on in here, which I did enjoy. But then at the same time, there are a few, I think I've hit the nub. Thank you, you've been a wonderful soundboard while I've worked this all out in my own head. I think sometimes I didn't like the way this book played into the stereotypes of queer people that I have seen before, both in fiction and actually in the real world, that sometimes don't perpetuate the best image of the community. And I think had some of the characters had a little bit more depth and history, then I would have felt like there would have been more nuance, and I think that's what I wanted. Wow, we got there. Thank you all so much, because now I know how I feel about this book. Enjoyed it, wanted more character depth, nuance, and that tension to just be ratcheted up a little bit, and less stereotypes that we see that aren't necessarily great for the queer community, but still an enjoyable read. Would I read more of him? I feel like I'm talking to the dog when I'm saying that. Yes, I would like to read The Recent East and see how I get on with that, because there were a lot of elements of this that I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, thank you if you're one of my lovely friends on the old Instagram that recommended it. Sadly, it just wasn't like an absolute banger for me, and I wanted it to be. Another book I wanted to be an absolute banger, and the final book I'm going to be talking about in this video, is Brat, a novel by Gabrielle Smith. I ordered this edition because the UK edition is absolutely fugly AF. If I have time, I'll pop a picture of it here, because I need to show you how awful it is. However, I do feel that cover is more indicative of the book. So this has been, I've seen, been sold as being a haunted house ghost story about a writer. And in some ways, I wouldn't even say it was a haunted house. It's definitely an old crumbly house, and there's weird things that happen within it, but never at any point do those weird things ever get explained or make sense or come to fruition. And for me, this book is quite badly written. So, I'm being really harsh, but I'm going to always be really honest about how I feel about books. The way this book becomes so repetitive, both in terms of certain metaphors, certain set pieces, but also just words occasionally, is quite... And yet, I could not stop reading it, and I finished it, and I probably should have DNF'd it, because that would have been fairer on both me and the book, and yeah. But it's about a young man whose his father has died. He's in the family home looking after it. His brother and his brother's fiance kind of want to take it over, or is it wife? Anyway, his brother and his partner want to sort of get him to do all the work of sorting it all out, because they've got other things to do. He's an out of work, technically, author, meant to be writing a new book that he can't seem to deliver. His mother is in a care home. His grandmother lives down the road and is delightful. She is my favourite character. And odd things are happening in the house when he's on his own. Could they be grief? Could they be something more spooky? Could he be having some sort of breakdown? I didn't care, really, if I'm honest. And well, I can't say anything because I don't want to spoil it if you do decide to pick this up or have this on your shelves already. But at the same time, there must have been... I think I was hoping that there would be some supernatural something that kind of built and built and built, rather than these random different things. But incidents keep happening over and over, but in different versions. It's so hard to talk about this book and not give it away. You see, me and wrap-ups, I just feel like I'm fluffing my way through it. Yeah, I just wasn't hooked, and I wanted to be hooked. And then there'd be certain things that happened, like, I shall say, there's a figure outside a shed who's really, really creepy. And I was like, oh, I'm in, this is like proper spooky dooky. And then it just sort of would really not happen again. And that, to me, I felt like this book being a book about an author called Gabrielle, funnily enough, not being able to write a book became this, well, it said a lot about this book. Does that make sense? I don't know. So, yeah, it was a real disappointment. And I think there was a lot that was trying to be done in this. You know, there's books within the book that we read that appear, then disappear, and then change text. And there's video that people watch that changes of one episode of a particular show. And there's a script in there. And it just, to me, felt like it completely lost control and didn't know, or didn't have any boundaries or any real direction. And it was almost like, well, that's the point of the book. But actually, to me, that was a real cop-out, and I think I felt miffed off by all of that, frankly. So yeah, really disappointed about this one, and would love to know if any of you have read it and absolutely loved it, because I want to know why. And that's something that I'm really intrigued by. I don't like it when I do a haul and people tell me, oh, that book's dreadful, don't read it. But I do love hearing afterwards if like I've loved a book and someone hasn't, their thoughts on it. And also when I've not loved a book and someone already has, I love that too. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I may never do a wrap up again, but I will be back talking about autumn on Sunday because, as I said, the Savage Department of Science and Meteorology have declared that Sunday the 1st of September is the first day of autumn. So that'll be nice. And then I'll be back with my August book haul and August wrap up next week. Well, if I ever do a wrap up again. But I'd love to know what you love in wrap ups, actually. That would be something that I'd really love to know. Well, I've said that, I'd love to know. I'd love to know. I won't have edited this, so you'll have seen the full chaos and absolute nervousness of me doing a wrap up for the first time in a long time. But I've been rusty this time. Hopefully I'll be less rusty next time and we'll get back into the swing. Because I love watching them and I really like chatting to you about what I have read. And I think I will do catch-ups of all the months that I've missed over on Patreon. Did I say that at the beginning? Because I had to re-record the beginning a few times because nerves. And I feel a bit rusty because I haven't filmed for a little bit. Anyway, lovely stuff. I'll see you Sunday. Let me know about any of these books and your thoughts on them, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, in the comments down below. Let's keep chatting about books there. And if I didn't mention it earlier, my Instagram, X, wishlist, Patreon, all those things are linked down below. And it's always lovely to have a chat with you about books and all that shenanigans. So yeah, keep the conversation going in the comments down below too. If I haven't said that already, I feel like maybe I have. I can't do the ends of videos very well, so I'll just simply say I hope you're reading something wonderful and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.